that great philosopher, Patrick McManus. If you don't know of Patrick McManus, I don't know if he still does or not, but he used to write that little funny column in the Outdoor Life magazine. It was always on the last page of the magazine. It was my favorite thing to read. But anyway, and that great work of philosophy called The Grasshopper Trap, he, in a story that he said that everyone has a worry box. And he says everybody is going to keep that worry box filled. He said no matter whether you're one and you know you're wondering when you're going to eat, or if you're 101 and wondering when you're going to sleep. He said it doesn't matter if you have nothing else to worry about, and if you have everything in the world you could ever need, you may be worried about what's happening to the favorite character on your favorite TV show, or how you're going to pay your bills, or whether you're going to lose your job. He said everybody is always going to fill their worry box with anything that they can. And if they don't have anything significant, they'll find something that's at least significant to them. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but there's a lot more truth to that, I think, than most of us give credit for. Are you preaching, James? Oh, okay. You see, there's this tendency for us not just to worry, but for our spirits to be agitated about something, for our souls to be aggravated about something. And the funny thing is that so much of Scripture points to peace, having peace. Isaiah, in Isaiah chapter 2, when the world is torn asunder, when the kingdoms are split and they're about to be conquered and overwhelmed, Isaiah longs for the day, and he cries out, and he says, listen, I'm looking for the day when spears will be turned to pruning forks to prune grapevines. When swords will be beaten into plowshares, where there will be no more need for instruments of war. Paul in Ephesians says that one of the fruits of the Spirit is that starts off with love, joy, and what's the next one? Peace, right? Love, joy, peace. And it was Jesus who in Matthew chapter 5, verse 9, we're going to memorize this today because I think it's important for us to remember. It's a real long one and it's very difficult, but I am confident that you can do it. In fact, I think even our chairman of deacons can memorize this one. Jesus says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Can y'all repeat that with me for a moment? Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. One more time. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. You see, there's something of value in peace. And so often, I think we think of peace as the lack of war. And while there is a world of a lot of truth to that, don't get me wrong, many of us so often struggle with what it means to have some sort of peace at spirit. I want you to find something that you worry about. You don't have to talk about it out loud. If you want to, you can. But think of something that you worry about. Right now. You got it? This means yes. This means no. Yes. Okay. I'm not trying to be, I guess I am, but I'm not trying to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Do what? Sarcastic, anyway, but I'm trying to get a little bit of engagement here. Because the reality of it is we all have this disturbed spirit about some things. But I want you to find something that you're worried about, that you're concerned about. And I want you to think for a moment. Worst case scenario, if what you fear with that problem arises, what will happen? For example, if you don't pay your cell phone bill, you don't have a cell phone. Now, you can't check Facebook all the time, everywhere you go, which I'm just going to be honest with you, is probably a lot more of a blessing than any of us would like to admit. Somebody asked me the other day if I asked what they posted on my Facebook wall, and I'm like, no, I haven't seen it. I haven't even checked my Facebook wall since long before my birthday. Anyway, it's kind of funny. They were mad at me. But and worst case scenario is you don't have a cell phone and nobody can call you and tell you about how bad the world is falling apart, right? I mean, we don't need cell phones to live and to thrive. We might need them to distract us from, the real problems in our life. We forget that homes for millennia never had electricity. If we lose power in a storm, is it that big of a deal? Oh, yes, we may lose some food. Yes, this may happen. Yes, this may happen, but we still have much better shelter than much of the world in existence today. You see, there's so many things that we want to worry about, that we're concerned about. And one of the things that I think the writer of Scripture, or the writers of Scripture say, when Paul says the fruits of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, did Paul experience a lot of peace? I mean, if you read through his letters, there's some lots of passion-filled moments, right? He says, listen, all those people that are creating, that guy that's sleeping with his father's wife in the church in Carnes, this is 1 Corinthians chapter 5, listen, just kick them out of the church. It's not that big of a deal. Can you imagine what it'd be like if we just decided all of a sudden that we didn't like, let's say, Matt Phillips. He wasn't here last week. He was on vacation. Shame on Matt. And if we just decided to kick him out of the church, I mean, even for some of the biggest things now, nobody ever kicks people out of churches anymore, right? I'm not suggesting we kick Matt Phillips out of the church, okay? Let's quit worrying. That's not... Crystal's back there smiling. Oh, welcome, Laura. We're glad you made it. Everybody say, hey, Laura, we're glad you made it. That's Will's fault, by the way. He called you out on the carpet when he welcomed everybody here. Sometimes it's just better to be silent, I think. And maybe this is one of those days I should have just kept quiet. Look on the bright side. I won't be here next week. You'll hear a great sermon from Revelation about the beast from Luke next Sunday. I don't know if it'll be about Revelation or not. I'm just kind of making him nervous. But Luke will be preaching next week, so you'll have a great sermon, okay? Saying that one of the fruits of the Spirit is that we experience peace. My point is this. It doesn't mean that there are no conflicts in life. It doesn't mean that there's no conflict in war. It doesn't mean that there are no problems, but it means that there's something that supersedes all of our problems, all of our worries, whether it's where we're going to save our lives, whether it's we're going to lose our jobs, whether it's going to, whatever it is, there's something that Paul says is, listen, one of the fruits of the Spirit is peace. And it's not that you're not going to experience problems. It's that somehow the peace that we have is based on this assurance that the God who called us, the God who gave his only Son that we might live, the God who conquered death, the God who conquered sin, the God who conquered the grave. And in 2 weeks from now, we'll celebrate this, that called Jesus forth from the grave and said, listen, it's time for you to come on up because you have conquered death now, and death is arrested eternally, is the same God who assures us that no matter what happens to us in our lives, whether we lose our homes, whether we lose our lives, no matter what happens to us, that God who conquered death, who conquered the grave, who conquered sin, who conquered irritating people like preachers who just talk too much, is the same God who offers us that assurance that no matter what happens in life, Christ is victorious. So we experience that peace. We are to experience that peace because of the Spirit that dwells in us. So when Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons or children of God, if you want to get real, nice about it. For they are called sons of God. What is Jesus getting at? Is it just those people who step in and stop wars, who settle the conflict in the Middle East, or conflicts in the Middle East? Is it the person who's able to stop all wars from ever ceasing? Jesus says that at a time, ironically. Have you ever heard, you remember history class, the Pax Romana, Latin for Roman peace, brought about by the Roman Empire? How did they bring peace into the world? Through violence, through conquering, right? They used the sword as an instrument of peace. And that works really, really well. That's why the Jews revolted not only in 65 AD, but again in 135 AD. Anyway, that's a whole other sermon for a whole other day. But they used the sword. They used violence. They used military might. How does Jesus bring peace? Through the sword? Or through offering himself in obedience to God? Now, does that mean there won't be some conflict? Because when we follow Jesus, we are focusing on God's priorities rather than the world's? No. But Jesus is onto something there where Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Jesus himself is our peace, right? He became our peace, set us at peace with God, and even at peace with others when we follow Jesus' way of meeting each other's, not meeting each other's needs, well, of that, but when we follow Jesus' way of dealing with conflict, right? We see that in Matthew 18. But by offering himself, Jesus gives us peace. And likewise, when you and I submit ourselves to following Jesus, did you know that we bring peace not only to ourselves, but we will bring peace to others? When I mentioned at one point that I was preaching on peace, actually Megan said this several times. She's not here, so I can throw her under the bus. I also preached on patience. We'll be there, in like 3 or 4 weeks after Easter. Megan said, Rob, you're real one to talk about these subjects. And she was talking in part about peace because, I have this tendency to stir up just enough trouble to make life interesting. Now, sometimes I stir up way, way, way more than I need to, and that's a bad thing. I recognize that. But somehow, some way, I look at the world around us, I recognize. Have you ever looked at the world around you? Do you know someone that is troubled in spirit, that is hurting, that is broken? When we encounter the people around us, sometimes they're our friends, sometimes they're our enemies. Sometimes they are people that we know, sometimes they're not people that we know. Sometimes they're people we like, sometimes they're people that we really, what's the opposite of like? Dislike, thank you. Sometimes they're people that, it's not even that we dislike them, we just don't care. But have you ever noticed that sometimes when we see others hurting, when we see people's spirits that are troubled, that are agitated, have you ever noticed that sometimes when we empathize with them, likewise our spirits can be troubled or irritated? Remember in John 11, when Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead, he goes out to the tomb. Now this is a memory verse that anyone in here can memorize today. John 11:35, Jesus wept. So if you memorize that one, you've learned 2 verses in Scripture, right? John 11:35, Jesus wept. When Jesus, he's gone out, he's talked to Mary and Martha, or he hadn't talked to Martha yet, but they're walking out to the tomb, and Jesus is about to raise Lazarus. Martha goes out to meet Jesus. Mary has already been there. And the Jews follow Martha because they're grieving, and so they're grieving, and Jesus sees them, and he weeps. And John writes that Jesus' spirit was agitated. Now, part of that is because their unbelief. They couldn't recognize that God was doing something miraculous in their difficult circumstances. And likewise, in our difficult circumstances, trust me when I tell you this, that God is doing something miraculous. We may never see it, or it may be something so obvious that no one can help but look and say, listen, that man is the Son of God. Not talking about us, but that person is moved, and God is working in them and through them, just like they did when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. But you know what? Jesus' spirit was agitated, and it was in part because they did not believe that God could work in their difficult circumstances. But the other reason is Jesus empathized with them. It's the same word that we see when the Samaritan, the story that we call of the Good Samaritan, when he sees the wounded man, and the Pharisee and the priest had already kind of skirted around, and they seen him and they didn't want anything to do with him. And the Samaritan had compassion, empathy for him. And he bound his wounds and helped him along. Jesus himself empathized with people in their hurt, in their sorrow, in their grief. When we encounter people, and you encounter them day after day after day, if you see anyone in the day, I promise you, you have encountered them, whether you know it or not, that they're hurting, their spirits are agitated, their souls are in anguish. Maybe it's because of grief. Maybe it's because of concern or worry. Whatever it is, when we encounter those people, when Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Did you know that you and I are children of God when we step in and when we offer peace to them? Sometimes it may be as simple as a word saying, listen, I want you to know that during this difficult time, you may not see it now, but I promise you that God is going to offer something redemptive here that will transform your life. It does not mean that it will be easy. It doesn't mean that you're going to be rich all of a sudden and you'll never have bills anymore. You know even rich folks have bills because they keep spending more money than they need to? Anyway, that's a whole other story too. But here's the thing. It may be that it's all your problems are not over with. But when they're surrendered to God, no matter what happens in this life, Jesus is victorious. Sometimes it's something as simple as, you know what? I recognize that you have a tree down in your yard. I happen to have a chainsaw and a couple kids, or I may not even have a couple kids, but I've got a strong back, and I don't mind helping with that project. It may be as simple as putting gas in someone's car. I'm not sure what it is. It's different with every single person. But until we get to the point where we can begin to recognize how other spirits are troubled, anxious, worrying, hurting, once we do that, we can step in and offer peace. Not a cheap peace that comes through violence. Not a cheap peace that comes after just words, but a peace that comes by recognizing, by participating in following Jesus. And if that means offering our lives to save someone else's, if that means purchasing a tank of gas for someone in need, if that means something as simple as giving a smile or a hug, but not a weird, creepy hug to a stranger. I mean, you can give a hug to never mind, let's move on. You know what I mean. Then what that means, at that moment, you and I are called children of God. Not because we have done the right thing, but because we have done the very kind of thing that Jesus did for you and for me. And we have modeled Jesus' actions. How can you bring peace to a broken and hurting world? In these next few moments, we're going to sing a song. I forgot what it is now. And the band's going to come on up. But I want to ask you a question. Are you absolutely positive that no matter what happens in your life right now, whatever is worrying you, whatever is worrying your family, whatever is troubling you, are you absolutely positive that no matter what happens, that Christ will be victorious? I can promise you this. That he will be victorious. It may be in a way that we expect. It may be in a way that we don't expect. And it may be in a way that blows our minds. But Christ has overcome. And he will continue to overcome these piddling problems that you and I have. And secondly, do you know of someone that you can help extend peace to? That you can be a peacemaker for? It starts today, and it starts now. The band is going to play. I'm going to offer you a moment to sit in your chair and pray. If you want to come to the altar and pray, maybe today you want to say, you know what, I have never experienced the peace of Christ. And right now, I want to make that step and decide to follow Jesus. If you'll come, Christ will accept you however you come, wherever you are in life's journey. I'll be sitting here with praying if you want to pray with me, if you want to come pray at the altar, or if you want to come and just make this decision today to follow Jesus. We welcome you now.
East to west,
Jesus, bringing peace and hope to a broken and hurting world, we magnify Christ through our actions. Let's stand and repeat and sing the song with us, and let's magnify Christ not only in song, but also in word and deed this week.
Suddenly articulate with 1,000 tongues to lift one cry. From north to south and east to west, we'd hear Christ be magnified. When the whole earth echoing his evidence, his name would burst from sea and sky. From rivers to the mountain tops, we'd hear Christ be magnified. Oh, Christ be magnified. Let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. When every creature finds his inmost melody, every human heart his native cry, then in one enraptured hymn of praise we'd sing Christ be magnified. Oh, Christ be magnified. Let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. I won't bow to idols. I'll stand strong and worship you. And if it puts me in the fire, I'll rejoice 'cause you're there too. And I won't be formed by feelings. I'll hold fast to what is true. And if the cross brings transformation, you can hang me there with you. 'Cause death is just the doorway into resurrection life. If I join you in your sufferings, then I'll join you when you rise. When you return in glory with all the angels and the saints, my heart will still be singing, my soul will be the same. Oh, Christ be magnified. Let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified. Let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me.
Hey, I'm Will Meadows, worship pastor here at Emmanuel Baptist Church. We're so happy you joined us this morning, and we hope the service blesses you. please leave us a comment in the comment section below the video. And if you would like to give financially to Emmanuel Baptist Church, you may do so by following the PayPal link in the description box below. Again, we're so happy you joined us this morning. We hope you do so next week. Hope you all have a blessed day.